At the small dining table in our Chicago apartment, the soft glow of the overhead light cast a warm circle around us. I poured a cup of chamomile tea and glanced at Mia, my granddaughter, who was quietly picking at her salad. "Mia, dear," I began gently, "is the $1,800 I send you each month still enough to cover your rent and school expenses?" The question hung in the air, fragile as a whispered hope. Across from me, my daughter Karen's fork clattered against her plate, startling in the sudden silence that fell over the room. She looked up sharply, eyes narrowed, lips pressed into a thin line, her face flushed with a mix of disbelief and irritation. "You're still giving her that much every month?" Karen snapped, her voice low but sharp enough to cut through the quiet. "Mia's a grown woman, she should be standing on her own 2 feet by now." Mia's eyes flickered toward Karen, hurt and confusion flashing there before she quickly looked down at her food. I could feel the tension coil tighter, thickening the air between us like a storm about to break. I took a slow breath and tried to steady my voice. "I just want to make sure she's managing okay. College expenses can pile up faster than we expect." Karen's expression twisted into something bitter. "Managing? Ellen, she's barely trying. I've seen her spend hours scrolling on her phone when she should be job hunting or studying. She's lazy, that's what it is." Her words landed like stones, hard and heavy. I glanced at Mia again. My heart ached seeing the pain flicker across her face, so young and vulnerable, caught between the woman who was her mother and me, the grandmother who had tried to offer a lifeline. Karen's voice, thick with judgment, filled the room. "I don't know why you keep enabling her, Mom. She's not a child anymore. If you keep giving, she'll never learn responsibility. She's taking advantage of your kindness." The room felt smaller suddenly, the walls closing in with the weight of Karen's accusations. I felt myself shrinking, caught between my love for Mia and my desire to keep peace in our fractured family. I tried to meet Karen's eyes calmly. "Karen, I understand your concerns, but Mia's still finding her way. I want to support her as best I can." My voice wavered slightly, but I held my ground. Karen scoffed, pushing her plate away. "You're just spoiling her. She needs to grow up." Mia, who had been silent until now, finally spoke in a soft, barely audible voice. "Mom, I'm trying, I really am." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, and I reached out, placing a hand gently over hers. Karen's glare shifted to me, her voice edged with frustration. "Mom, you don't have to do this. I'm telling you, she's wasting your money." The room was thick with unspoken grievances. I remembered the years past, the sacrifices I had made, the quiet battles fought behind closed doors. My late husband's pension, modest but steady, was meant to support our family. After he passed, I had promised myself I would do everything to help Mia, especially after her parents' divorce left her adrift. Karen had always been skeptical, critical even, of the help I provided. She believed that financial aid was a crutch that kept Mia from learning to stand on her own. But to me, it was a bridge, a way to keep my beloved granddaughter afloat until she could find her footing. I looked around the table at the 2 women I loved fiercely but who seemed worlds apart in their views. The tension was palpable, the silence after Karen's outburst heavy and suffocating. I sipped my tea, searching for the right words. "Karen, I'm not trying to spoil Mia, I'm trying to help her. She's working on her studies and looking for part-time work. It's not easy for her." Karen shook her head, her voice rising slightly. "That's not good enough. She needs to take responsibility. You're just making excuses for her." I felt a surge of protectiveness rise within me, mingled with weariness. Sometimes, love means giving someone time, not just pushing them to grow on your schedule. Mia's hands tightened around my own, seeking comfort. The sparkle of hope I had held onto flickered in her eyes, fragile but present. Karen's face hardened. "I don't want to argue about this, but you need to see reality. You're only hurting yourself by enabling her." I swallowed the lump forming in my throat. "I hear you, Karen, but I also see a young woman trying, even if it's not in the way you expect." Karen's lips pressed into a thin line and she didn't respond. The silence that followed was heavy but less charged. I hoped it was the beginning of a difficult conversation, one where we might find some common ground. As Mia looked up, her voice steadier now, she said, "Thank you, Grandma, for believing in me." That simple sentence was a balm to my soul. In that moment, despite the tension and harsh words, I knew my support mattered. It was a quiet promise that I would stand by Mia, come what may. I glanced at Karen one last time that evening, sensing the storm was not yet over, but hoping that with patience we might find a way through the clouds that had gathered around our family table. After that uneasy dinner, I found myself sitting alone in the quiet of my living room, the weight of Karen's accusations still pressing against my chest. My mind drifted back to Harold, my late husband, whose steady hands had built the foundation of our modest life together. He had worked long hours in the factory, coming home with tired eyes but a determined spirit. We had saved every penny we could, careful not to waste a dime so that someday our family would have a little security. Harold's passing had left a hollow space in our home and in my heart, but I had promised him and myself that I would do all I could to hold our family together, to support Mia as she struggled through the aftermath of her parents' divorce. The years since had been a delicate balancing act, raising Mia when her mother was overwhelmed, filling in the gaps when her father was absent, and trying to hold onto the memories of the life we once had. Karen had never hidden her disapproval of my financial help. From the moment Mia began to need support, Karen's eyes would harden, her voice laced with criticism whenever I mentioned sending money. She believed I was enabling Mia's dependence, that by continuing to give, I was doing more harm than good. Her words echoed in my mind like a persistent storm, challenging the love and responsibility I felt so deeply. I recalled the nights when Mia would sit beside me on the worn couch, her head resting against my shoulder, confiding in me about the difficulties she faced. School felt overwhelming, social circles seemed closed to her, and the pressure to be independent was crushing. She wasn't just a lazy child, as Karen claimed. She was a young woman grappling with uncertainty and pain. Despite Karen's harsh judgments, I knew Mia was trying. I had seen it in small moments. The way she stayed up late to finish assignments, the tentative steps she took toward applying for part-time jobs, even the times she would ask me for advice on budgeting or time management. These were signs of effort, signs that deserved recognition, not condemnation. But Karen's disapproval was a constant shadow in our lives. It made me question whether I was doing the right thing, whether my love was enough to bridge the gap between them. I often found myself caught in a silent battle, torn between my daughter's demands for independence and my granddaughter's need for support. One afternoon, as I was sorting through old photo albums, I came across a picture of Harold smiling broadly, holding a young Mia in his arms. The memory of his gentle laugh and unwavering kindness steadied me. I realized then that my role was clear: to be the steady hand Mia needed, even if it meant weathering storms of criticism. I decided to reach out quietly, hoping to understand Mia's world better. I contacted her school counselor, Mrs. Jensen, a kind woman who had always been supportive. On the phone, Mrs. Jensen shared encouraging news. Mia had recently improved her grades and was exploring opportunities for part-time employment. Hearing this gave me a renewed sense of hope. With this information, I felt a quiet determination to protect Mia from Karen's harsh judgments. I wanted to show Karen that Mia was not the lazy young woman she perceived, but someone striving against difficult odds. I also knew I needed to set boundaries with Karen, to stand firm in my support without allowing her criticism to erode my resolve. In the days that followed, I confided in my close friend Margaret, who had been a pillar of strength through many trials. Over tea, I shared the tension between Karen and me, my fears for Mia, and the pain of feeling caught in the middle. Margaret listened patiently, then gently advised me to hold firm and communicate openly with Karen, but also to protect my own peace. "Ellen," she said, "you are doing what love looks like, but love also means knowing when to stand your ground. Don't let Karen's bitterness diminish your heart or your support for Mia." Her words resonated deeply. I realized that while Karen's concerns came from a place of frustration, they should not dictate the care and patience Mia deserved. Mia and I began to spend more time together, sharing honest conversations about hopes and setbacks. One evening, as we sat side by side on the porch, she confided, "Grandma, sometimes I feel like I'm disappointing everyone, but when you believe in me, it helps me keep going." I smiled, squeezing her hand. "You're not alone, Mia. We'll face these challenges together." Those moments of connection strengthened our bond, giving me the courage to face the growing divide with Karen. I knew the road ahead would be difficult, but I was ready to stand by Mia's side, nurturing her growth with quiet resolve. As I prepared for the next family gathering, I held on to the hope that with patience and understanding we could begin to heal the fractures between us. For now, my heart remained steady, anchored by love and the memories of a life built on perseverance and care. The tension that had simmered beneath the surface during our last dinner seemed to thicken in the days that followed. I tried to keep a calm demeanor, but Karen's criticisms echoed louder in my mind with each passing hour. One afternoon, as I was tidying the living room, I overheard her voice from the kitchen, sharp and bitter, speaking on the phone. "I'm telling you, Mia's wasting Mom's money. She just sits around all day not doing anything worthwhile. Mom's spoiling her and it's only going to make things worse," Karen said, her tone dripping with disdain. I stood frozen, the sound of her words slicing through the quiet of our home. My hands clenched into fists, but I reminded myself to breathe, to stay steady for Mia's sake. Karen wasn't aware I was within earshot, and I didn't want to start a confrontation then and there. But hearing her dismiss my granddaughter's efforts so callously stirred a protective fire inside me. Later that evening, I found Mia sitting alone in the small corner of the kitchen, her eyes downcast as she stirred a cup of tea. The hurt was plain on her face, the shadows beneath her eyes deepening with each criticism she absorbed. "Mia," I said softly, sitting beside her, "I heard your mother earlier. I want you to know I believe in you." She looked up, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I try, Grandma, I really do. It's just hard. Sometimes I feel like no one sees the effort I'm making." I squeezed her hand gently. "I see you, and I'm proud of you. Progress isn't always visible to everyone, but that doesn't mean it's not happening." Mia nodded, but the weight of Karen's words seemed to linger. Determined to shield Mia from the storm of negativity, I began quietly gathering evidence of her efforts. I requested copies of her recent school reports and her applications for part-time jobs. Each paper painted a picture different from the one Karen insisted upon, a young woman struggling but committed to improving her situation. One afternoon, I sat with the documents spread out before me, feeling a mixture of pride and sorrow. Mia was working hard despite the obstacles she faced. I knew I needed to find a way to confront Karen's harsh judgments without igniting further conflict. The family dynamics were fragile, and I feared that any direct confrontation might deepen the rift. Yet silence felt like complicity, and I couldn't allow Mia to be diminished by baseless accusations. Carefully, I began to plan how to approach Karen, thinking about ways to bridge the gap with understanding rather than blame. I wanted to remind her that Mia was more than what her frustrations painted. In the meantime, Mia remained quiet, retreating inward as the emotional toll of the situation weighed on her. I noticed the way she flinched at sudden movements or sharp tones, the way her laughter became rarer, replaced by long moments of silence. One evening, as we sat together in the living room, Mia finally opened up. "Grandma, sometimes I feel like I'm stuck between you and Mom and I don't know where I belong." I reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "You belong with both of us, Mia, and I promise I'll do everything I can to make sure you're supported and loved." Her eyes met mine, filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. It was a fragile trust, one I intended to protect fiercely. I also began to reflect on Karen's perspective. Her frustrations stemmed from fear that Mia would never find her footing, fear that our family's struggles would continue unchecked. While her words were harsh, they came from a place of concern, misguided though it may have been. With this in mind, I sought advice from a trusted friend who had navigated similar family tensions. We discussed the importance of setting boundaries and standing firm in my support for Mia, while also striving to foster open communication with Karen. Sometimes, my friend said gently, you have to be the voice of reason in the chaos, even if others aren't ready to hear it. Her words gave me courage. I realized that protecting Mia meant not only shielding her from criticism but also advocating for her growth and acknowledging the efforts she was making. As I prepared to address these issues with Karen, I felt a renewed strength. I knew the path ahead would be difficult, but I was determined to fight for Mia's dignity and to mend the fractures within our family. In the quiet moments before sleep, I whispered a promise to myself, to be the steady hand guiding Mia through the storm, to be the voice that lifted her when others doubted, and to find a way to bring healing to the hearts that had been wounded by misunderstanding. The days stretched ahead, uncertain but filled with the hope that through patience and love we could begin to rebuild what had been strained. For now, I held onto that hope tightly, knowing it was the first step toward change. After the days filled with quiet frustration and heavy silences, I made a call to Mia's school counselor, Mrs. Jensen. Her voice was warm and familiar when she answered, a comforting presence I hoped would shed light on Mia's recent efforts. Mrs. Jensen, I began, I wanted to check in on Mia's progress at school. I'm concerned she's been misunderstood at home, and I want to make sure I'm supporting her in the best way possible. There was a pause, then Mrs. Jensen's tone brightened. Ellen, Mia has been working hard these past few weeks. Her grades have shown improvement and she's been more engaged in class. I've also noticed she's been proactive about looking for part-time jobs to help with expenses. Hearing this was like a balm to my weary heart. It confirmed what I had long suspected, that Mia was trying, even if those efforts sometimes went unnoticed or unappreciated. Encouraged, I asked if there were any specific steps Mia could take to continue building her confidence and independence. Mrs. Jensen suggested that Mia might benefit from a more structured plan, perhaps setting small goals and tracking her progress, which could help her feel more in control and motivated. I thanked Mrs. Jensen and ended the call feeling a renewed sense of purpose. I wanted to share this information with Karen, hoping that facts might soften her harsh judgments, but I also knew that a direct confrontation might not be the best approach just yet. In the days that followed, I confided in my close friend Margaret, who had been a steady source of wisdom and comfort during many family challenges. Over cups of steaming tea in my kitchen, I poured out my worries, the tension between Karen and me, the hurt Mia carried silently, and my deep desire to protect and nurture my granddaughter. Margaret listened patiently, her eyes kind and understanding. Ellen, she said gently, you have a heart full of love and that's clear, but you also need to set boundaries. Karen's criticism is hard to bear, but you don't have to accept it as truth. Stand firm in your support for Mia and don't let anyone make you doubt the good you're doing. Her words resonated deeply. I realized that while Karen's concerns came from a place of frustration, they should not dictate the care and patience Mia deserved. We talked about ways I could approach Karen with the information I had, perhaps inviting her to see Mia's progress firsthand or encouraging her to speak with Mrs. Jensen herself. The goal was to open a dialogue to replace accusations with understanding. Meanwhile, Mia and I grew closer. We spent evenings together sharing honest conversations about her hopes, fears, and the challenges she faced. One night, as we sat side by side on the porch swing, she confided, "Grandma, sometimes I feel like I'm disappointing everyone. But when you believe in me, it gives me strength." I smiled, squeezing her hand. "You're not alone, Mia, we'll face this together." These moments of connection strengthened our bond and gave me the courage to face the coming conversations with Karen. I also began to gather more concrete evidence of Mia's progress, copies of her improved report cards, notes from Mrs. Jensen, and printouts of job applications Mia had submitted. I wanted to present these not as ammunition in a battle, but as a testament to Mia's efforts. Preparing for the next family dinner, I rehearsed how I might share this information with Karen calmly and compassionately. I hoped that seeing the facts would help her understand Mia's situation better and soften her stance. The night before the gathering, I sat quietly in my favorite chair, the documents laid out before me. I thought about the journey we had taken, the struggles, the misunderstandings, and the small victories. I felt a quiet resolve settle over me. This was not just about money or independence. It was about love, patience, and believing in the potential within someone even when the world seemed to doubt them. As I prepared to step back into the family circle, I carried with me the hope that honesty and empathy could begin to heal old wounds. For Mia, for Karen, and for myself, it was a chance to rebuild trust brick by brick with understanding at its foundation. The evening of the family dinner arrived with a heavy sense of anticipation. The soft clinking of dishes and the faint aroma of roasted chicken filled the air as I arranged the table, careful to create a calm environment where difficult conversations could unfold. Mia sat quietly beside me, her fingers nervously twisting the napkin in her lap. Karen arrived shortly after, her expression guarded but not openly hostile, a subtle shift from previous encounters. As we settled around the table, I took a deep breath and decided to begin with gentle honesty. Karen, I've been thinking a lot about our last conversation and the concerns you raised about Mia. I reached for the folder I had brought, sliding it across to her. I wanted to share some information that might offer a fuller picture of what Mia has been working on. Karen's brow furrowed as she opened the folder, revealing school reports, notes from Mrs. Jensen, and copies of the job applications Mia had submitted. I could see her fingers pause over the pages, her eyes scanning the evidence. Mia has improved her grades significantly, I continued. She's been attending extra tutoring sessions and has applied to several part-time positions to help with her expenses. I know it's not perfect, but she's making real progress. Karen looked up, her eyes flickering with something I hadn't seen before, perhaps surprise, maybe even reluctant acknowledgement. I didn't realize she was trying this hard, she said quietly, her voice softer than usual. Mia shifted in her seat, a tentative smile breaking through her nervousness. I've been working on it, Mom. I want to be responsible. I just needed some time. I reached out and placed a hand over Mia's, feeling the warmth and vulnerability beneath her skin. Mia's efforts are real, Karen. I've seen her determination and I believe she deserves our support, not just criticism. Karen's lips tightened, but the tension in her shoulders seemed to ease slightly. I suppose I've been harsher than I should have been. I was worried and I guess I didn't see the full picture. The room grew quieter, the weight of years of misunderstanding settling between us. I sensed this moment was fragile, a crossroads where honesty could begin to bridge the gap. I want us to work together, I said carefully. Mia needs all of us to believe in her. We can't expect her to grow without encouragement and patience. Karen nodded slowly, the hard lines in her face softening. You're right, I want to support her, I just didn't know how. Mia's eyes brightened and she looked at her mother with a hope I hadn't seen before. Maybe we can figure it out together. The conversation continued, slower now, more thoughtful. Karen asked questions about Mia's classes and job prospects, genuinely interested in how she could help. I felt a cautious optimism blossoming, a tentative step toward healing the rifts that had divided us. As the evening wore on, I caught a glimpse of the family we could be, a family willing to listen, to understand, and to grow. The hard edges of resentment began to dull, replaced by a fragile but real connection. Before the meal ended, I suggested that we make these dinners a regular occurrence, a chance to check in with each other and share both worries and successes. Karen agreed and Mia smiled, her relief palpable. Walking Mia to the door that night, I whispered, "You're doing wonderfully and we're going to keep moving forward together." She hugged me tightly, and in that embrace I felt the strength of the bond we had nurtured, a bond that had survived storms of doubt and criticism, now ready to face the future with hope. That night, as I lay in bed, I reflected on the evening's progress. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a beginning, a moment where truth and empathy had started to heal old wounds. I knew there would be challenges ahead, but for the first time in a long while, I believed our family could find a path toward understanding and support. The journey was far from over, but the foundation had been laid, and in that quiet realization, I found peace. In the weeks following that pivotal family dinner, a subtle shift began to take hold. Karen's sharp criticisms softened into cautious support, a tentative truce that felt fragile but promising. She still worried, her protective instincts flaring in moments of tension, but the outright hostility gave way to a more measured patience. Mia, sensing the easing of tension, began to blossom. Encouraged by my continued financial support paired with gentle nudges toward independence, she took on a part-time job at the local bookstore. I remember the pride swelling in my chest the first time she told me about her new schedule, balancing work and studies with a newfound determination. It wasn't perfect. There were late nights and moments of exhaustion, but she carried herself with a quiet confidence that spoke volumes. One afternoon, as I sat across from Mia at the kitchen table, she unfolded her plans for the future. "Grandma, I want to take more responsibility for myself," she said, eyes bright with resolve. "I'm thinking about applying for scholarships, maybe even internships next summer." I smiled, feeling the warmth of hope bloom inside me. "That's wonderful, Mia, you've come so far." At the same time, I continued encouraging open communication between Karen and Mia. It wasn't always easy. Old patterns of frustration would sometimes resurface, but with each conversation, they learned a little more about each other's fears and hopes. Karen, too, seemed to find a new respect for Mia's efforts. One evening, she mentioned in passing how proud she was of Mia's perseverance. It was a small victory, but it carried the weight of healing. Throughout this time, I maintained my financial support, but with clear boundaries. I encouraged Mia to budget carefully, to seek out opportunities that would help her stand on her own feet. I wanted to nurture her independence, not foster dependence. Mia's confidence grew, and with it, her sense of self-worth. The sparkle in her eyes returned, and her laughter became more frequent, filling the house with a lightness that had been missing. As the family dynamics began to shift, I felt a quiet satisfaction. The journey was slow and uneven, but progress was real. The walls of resentment and misunderstanding had started to crumble, replaced by bridges built on trust and empathy. One evening, after a particularly heartfelt conversation with Karen, I found myself reflecting on how the past months had transformed us all. The pain and conflict hadn't disappeared, but they no longer defined us. I realized that by standing firm in my love and support for Mia, I had helped create space for healing, not just for her, but for Karen and me as well. Mia's growth became a beacon of hope, a testament to what patience and belief could achieve. She was no longer the uncertain girl caught between harsh judgments. She was becoming a young woman ready to face the world with strength and grace. As I watched her prepare for bed one night, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. The road ahead would still have its challenges, but we were moving forward together, united by love and understanding. In that quiet moment, I understood that family, with all its complexities, was a journey of continuous growth, a journey I was honored to walk alongside Mia and Karen. Several months later, Mia and I sat at a small community center table, surrounded by flyers and notebooks. We had just launched a support group for young adults facing challenges similar to hers, those caught between family expectations, financial struggles, and the search for self-reliance. Watching her speak with confidence to a room of attentive faces, I felt a swell of pride that went beyond words. From the shy, uncertain girl I had known, Mia had blossomed into a beacon of hope for others. Her perseverance and steady growth had become a source of inspiration, not just within our family but in the wider community. I remembered the long nights we spent together, the quiet conversations filled with fears and dreams, the moments when I held her hand and told her she was not alone. Those moments had laid the foundation for this new chapter, a chapter where Mia's voice would carry strength and kindness beyond our little circle. One afternoon, as we packed materials for our next meeting, Mia turned to me with a thoughtful smile. "Grandma, I've been thinking about starting a scholarship fund through the group, something to help students who don't have the support they need." Her eyes shone with determination, and I saw in her the same fire that had carried her through difficult times. "That's a beautiful idea, Mia. You're turning your experience into something powerful." Together, we began planning the foundation, reaching out to local businesses and community leaders. It was a labor of love fueled by the belief that no one should feel invisible or unsupported. Meanwhile, Mia's academic journey continued to flourish. She graduated with honors, her name called aloud at the ceremony, a moment that brought tears to my eyes. The girl who had once been doubted by those closest to her stood tall, ready to embrace the future she had fought so hard to shape. After graduation, Mia joined the law practice of Barnes, the kindly attorney who had once advised me. Specializing in elder advocacy, she dedicated herself to giving voice to those who had been silenced, a cause close to her heart. On the day of Mia's wedding, I sat in the front row, overwhelmed by emotion as she pledged her love to Noah. She radiated joy and confidence, a testament to the journey we had shared. The photo of us laughing together, framed and hanging in my bookstore, Quiet Justice, reminded me daily of the strength that comes from being seen and heard. After their honeymoon, Mia confided in me her plans to open a new branch of the foundation, a safe space where those overlooked by society could find support and understanding. As I reflected on our journey, I realized that the quiet strength I had nurtured throughout my life had become a powerful force for change. Justice, I had learned, didn't always come with loud proclamations. It often arrived softly in acts of listening, patience, and unwavering belief. The legacy we created was one of hope, proving that even the deepest divides could be bridged with love and determination. And as Mia's laughter echoed through the halls of our community center, I knew that our story was only just beginning.